Following day 2 of the Carolina Hurricanes training camp yesterday, we also heard from Rod Brind'Amour and Alex Pashin. We will dissect what they had to say following day 2 in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, I'd like to thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Saturday morning. And this episode is also brought to you by the lovely folks over at BetOnline. BetOnline is where you can find the latest scores, odds, lines, whatever you need for your sports wagering information. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, folks, as I mentioned in the previous episode, we did hear from Jesperi Kotkanemi in our in the press conference following day 2 of Carolina Hurricanes training camp. Day 3 is going on right now as we speak. But not only did we hear from him, quick recap though, he talked about him having a bigger role, getting more ice time, and having a year in the system, understanding how things go. That's something we talked about a lot here on the show. Him also, really liking how Seth Jarvis is looking so far. And, also, the veteran guys coming in. Another guy we talked about in the previous episode or episodes was Calvin DeHaan in the literal previous episode of him coming back into the fold, him having matured, wanting to play for a winning team now, after having 3, not so great seasons in Chicago. And we also heard from Ryan Zingle following day 1 of him, playing banged up the past few seasons, bouncing around and just, wanting to get back to hockey. He's had some surgeries, he's better now. He's on that 1-year, 2-way deal. I do think, both those guys, I've said that I do think that they can be on that opening night roster. Zingle there on that 4th line. And then having DeHaan maybe kind of cycle in and out of that third pairing, kind of like how we had Brendan Smith and Ethan Bear doing with Ian Cole last year. I could really see a situation similar to that this year, but ultimately, we won't know until we know. But we did hear from Rod Brind'Amour as well following day 2 of training camp. And now we're going to listen to just what he had to say following that day 2. And then we will dissect just what he had to say.
If any of the younger guys, they've been in their own kind of group, any of those guys caught your eye?
Well, they all do. For some, reason or another, the bringing. For me, it's actually good because I get to know them a little better when they are together. And I don't want to single anyone out. I think they've all done a pretty good job. Today I was pleasantly surprised because we're introducing a lot of kind of new concepts, and I seem to pick it up fairly well. So, no, it's been good.
The few guys that joined Chicago at the end of the year, do you see that they really have a little head start on them?
It's a good observation, actually. Yeah, the big defenseman Mendel is definitely, you could tell he's a little older, and you can see because I think had a little experience in Chicago. Ponomarev was down there. You can tell he's one of the guys that has really helped the younger guys that are here, especially the guys that don't speak the language as well. So he's been a good help for us. But yeah, that's definitely helped those guys.
What do you like about Ponomarev? His game.
Yeah, well, he's not a big guy, but he's not afraid to get in there. I like that you can see he's got a good skill set for sure and good mind for the game, and another young player to definitely keep an eye on.
You like guys who can play in the middle and do it responsibly, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's having that awareness to it, right? Like he understands that there's one part of the game is to have the puck and make plays, but there's a whole another part of the game, and the young guys sometimes take a little longer to figure that out.
Speaking of those kind of guys, Jack Drury's here with the big group. What have you kind of seen from him?
Well, I mean, I think he's fit right in. I mean, certainly it's 2 practices, so but that group is obviously a more veteran group, and he's the young kid in there, and I think he's definitely holding his own.
What do you foresee KK's role being this year? Can he take over for Churchill?
Yeah, well, that's the hope. That's why he got brought in. You always, I think management had an idea that this might be exactly what happened. Troach was going to move on, and so had a good backup plan. And he's a young kid with a lot of talent, and we talked about this a lot. And I think it's time now. Okay, he's got to start emerging, and I think I got to give him the opportunity, but he's got to go ahead and earn it. So I think there's a good understanding there, and we'll see where it goes.
What does he need to work on in your mind?
Well, he's still he's still, for me, just a young player. So you would ask me about any of the young players, I'd say the same thing, right? You got to get, your body's got to get, stronger. So you got to put the work in there. And then, it's amazing how once you do that, the game starts to come a little easier. So definitely has the mind for it. And, he just needs to get better like all the young guys.
About Stefan Nason, who's spent his career bouncing around, playing a lot of being 13th forward or being up and down and stuff. Obviously, didn't play a lot with you guys last year, but had the monster year in the AHL. And it has to be valuable to have a guy like that knows how to play,
yeah,
has that skill.
Well, listen, he did a great job throughout the whole organization, because when he came up, he played well, and then when he went back down, he was a leader for that group. And when you have a veteran player that can show the way for guys like Jack Drury, for the guys that were down there, I think that's a huge asset. Obviously, he put up a good big year, and we're going to give him every opportunity here to see what he can do.
As Seth Jarvis goes into his second year, what are you hoping to see from him in terms of his growth and development?
It's no different than Chip's question for me. He's another young kid that we want to keep getting better. Obviously he showed really well at the second half of the year and into the playoffs, and he's got to keep growing. He's got to keep taking that next step. And no different, honestly, if you're sitting there talking about any of the players, they got to keep getting better. Like, you can't be just happy where you're at. But the younger guys have more room to grow. I mean, that's just the fact, right? The older guys, they're growing all they have for the most part. Now you're trying to keep what you had, and the younger kids, we need to get them the maximum. We need to get the most out of them.
So if you played tomorrow, who's your 5'6" defenseman?
If I played tomorrow, that's we've got a lot of them. So it's nobody's made or not made the team in 2 practices. That's going to work itself out, and the only way to do that is in the games. So we definitely have a healthy competition this year. Maybe different than in the past, where there's definitely some, okay, what are we going to do here at this spot or that spot, because we have a lot of good players that are fighting for those jobs.
Do you notice any of your core guys that are maybe younger stepping up in a bigger leadership role, or even the older guys who have come in? Have they been outspoken?
Well, all the guys we brought in are leader type players. I mean, obviously we talked a lot about Bernsey. That's an obvious one. I think Stats he's kind of been around forever, and so nothing really phases him. And so yeah, all the players we felt like we brought Calvin back. He's been around. All these guys lead in different ways. I think, we'll see more of that emerge too, as they feel a little more comfortable in doing that. But no, we definitely have a kind of a much different feel from the group, because we are so a lot more veteran heavy, if you will.
Is Sebastian a veteran yet, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he is. Let's be honest. I mean, he's still a young player, but we all know that the value that he has for our group, and he's been a leader for a while now, and that's not certainly going to change.
How do you keep Max involved in what's going on?
It's
Does
tough.
he sit in on
Yeah,
meetings? And
yeah. He comes in, makes sure he's staying up to date, as if, the only thing he's missing is getting out there. So he does his, his rehab, and then he comes in here and watches whatever he needs to watch, what we're doing, and trying to stay upbeat. I mean, it's not going to be easy. It's probably going to get harder for him the closer we get and when we actually start playing. But, we've all kind of, guys, if you play the game a long time, you've been in that situation. And so he's got a lot of guys to lean on, kind of just make him, for sure feel part of it, and then looking forward to when he's healthy to help us out.
Rod, when you won the cup, you always challenge me to ask you a question.
Well, I don't challenge you to
When
ask me a question.
When you won the cup, you had
it
roughly.
took this long to ask it.
When you won the cup, you had roughly 10 new players. Last year, you went 9-0 with a bunch of new faces. A lot of great chatter on the ice today, I noticed in the NHL group. If you were to extract why that cohesion has been, because that's tough, has been so instant that hopefully can happen with new faces this year, what would you extract?
Well, I think it's kind of what we've all somewhat alluded to, is we're more a veteran savvy group, and I think when you bring in those type of players, they just have that natural understanding of how things work, and there's a confidence because they work hard, right? They come in, this is how we do it. It's not new. This isn't earth shattering. We got a job to do, and go out and try to accomplish it. And I think they also know that they've heard it a million times. Everywhere you go, you say the same things. You have fun in what you're doing, but work hard first. And I think that's what we're seeing out there, to be honest with you. The one thing that's great about having an older group with a lot of guys that haven't won is there's this kind of, you don't have to say it, there's this hunger that you can see with this group. And I hope that continues throughout the year.
How'd you like the way Gleese was pushing the defenseman during the skate at the end there?
I tell you, if we run out of D, then we've always said you got to be ready. So he's trying to get ready.
He's got the shin pads.
All right, thanks,
Okay.
Roddy.
Thanks, Rod.
Yeah, so following day 2, Rod Brind'Amour did have a lot more to say. Yeah, I took a lot of notes, as to what he had to say, following day 2. And again, a lot of good stuff, a lot of good takeaways. One thing, I think a lot of people, had found interesting, was kind of how they're divided up this year. You have a lot of, the young guys in their own group. It's not, a mixture of things. It's all, the young guys are primarily in their own group, and the veterans are in their own group. And I like how he said those guys were picking things up well. I like that. And maybe we do have a guy that comes out of that particular group and is on the roster. I don't know. He did say so right now nobody has made the team, nobody has not made the team. So it's gonna be interesting. Again, we go back to it a lot. But Seth Jarvis, guy, it was juniors or NHL. That was it, and he forced their hand into bringing him up to the NHL. So you never know what can happen in this situation as far as these younger guys. You know, again, a thing that I've talked about a lot here recently was Jesperi Kotkanemi moving up and into Vincent Trocheck's old spot in that second line center role. And a thing that I found interesting here was, they acquired him as a backup plan because they had a feeling that he wasn't going to be back. And, obviously, he talked about, Kotkaniemi, stepping up, improving, getting stronger, all that kind of stuff. Same with Seth Jarvis in that regard of, getting stronger and just continuing to improve. But again, it just kind of goes back to like, dang, how long did they know Vincent Trocheck probably wasn't going to be back. I feel like, at the beginning of the season, like when that offer sheet happened, maybe it's a little, they're still trying to negotiate. But, I said it the other day, like, trade deadline, if you knew like you weren't going to be back, did they try to shop him around and maybe get something? I don't know. Something we will probably never know as far as, that kind of stuff. But another thing, that I like, with this team that he talked about a lot was, just how veteran heavy they are now. We look at, a couple years ago where it was, a lot of young guys, inexperienced, and now not necessarily the case. He said Sebastian Aho is a leader now, and he's another one. Just kind of surprised just how long he's been in the league. And then the guys that they brought in being leaders, and again, guys that were already on the team, especially the young group of guys like Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, uh, those guys being they've been around. Like, they know how the game works. It's not, like the 2018, 2019 season where, they're all still kids. That's not the case anymore. And, he specifically, called out Brent Burns, Paul Stastny, Calvin DeHaan as far as being leaders. And then, obviously, he said everyone, is that they brought in, but specifically calling those guys out. You knew Brent Burns was going to be in that situation. Paul Stastny, you figured he'd be there as well. Calvin DeHaan, we talked about him in the previous episode of how he has, matured and grown. And I think, again, I really think he's going to be a guy that'll be on this team, especially the way Rod talked about being a leader, for the group right now. I seriously think, he could be. I seriously think he's going to get a contract. I really do. I really do. Whether it's a one or two way, it remains to be seen. But another thing, that I did like, and was Max Pacioretty. He said, how he's, sitting in on things. He goes, does his rehab that he has to do. Then he sits in on meetings and, all that stuff. And I do like that. It's, you knew we talked about, when he'll probably be back, late January, early February, that time range, should everything go correctly for him in terms of his healing process. But the fact that he's still, being a part of the thing, he's not just doing his rehab and going on about his business. He's going there and doing, and being a part of the team. He can't skate, but he's being in those, being around the team. I think that right there is going to be very, very important come late January, February, March, whenever he is finally suiting up. The fact that he already has that relationship with his teammates. He's been here since the beginning of the season, and he's not just, oh, I tore my Achilles, I'm gonna do my rehab and go do, whatever. You're like, no, he's being a part of everything. He just can't skate. And I do think that is going to be vital for whenever he does come back, that he's already going to have that relationship with his teammates, even though it's gonna be off ice, that chemistry is gonna be there. He's gonna know, all right, this is how this guy operates. And, he's gonna know what to expect. Obviously, getting out on the ice is gonna be a completely different beast than, sitting in a meeting and, maybe, sitting and watching these guys practice. It's gonna be a completely different beast, I know. But he's at least going to have something there. He's not going in blind, if you know what I mean. There's something there, and that he's at least going to know what to expect. I think that is going to be really, really important for Max Pacioretty. I love that he is being a part of everything. Don't know, if Jake Gardner is sitting in there and whatnot. Don't know what's going on there. Again, he had that quote unquote setback, and that's why, he's not there right now. But there's been no reports of whether or not he's there or not, but I don't know. We've talked about that to death at this point, but what are we gonna do? It's crazy. I don't know what to expect with Jake Gardner at this point, but it is what it is, and I think, we'll just have to wait and see. But, we also heard from the man who did the fetch in the prospect tournament, Alex Pashin, and we will hear from him and just what he had to say right after this quick break, folks. Now, folks, football season is underway. Hockey season is right around the corner. So, BetOnline is your number one source for all of your football betting info this season and hockey when it rolls around here soon. Find the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up to the minute scores for every sport out there. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, wrestling, golf, whatever you want, they got you covered. So head to the website betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more now. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, folks, we already heard from Jesperi Kotkanemi in the previous episode following day 2. We just heard from Rod Brind'Amour. Now it is time to hear from Alex Pashin.
I guess for both of you, how helpful has it been to have each other here, in the lead up to camp and everything?
Как вообще нам вместе, то, что мы в сборной играли и сюда вместе приехали? It's helpful for us because we played in a junior team in Russia together. I think it's much better and easier to be involved to the team. Like we help each other. I'm trying to translate much as possible for Alex.
How about for him? Has it?
Как тебе здесь?
Все нравится, все хорошо.
Everything is good. Everything he likes.
What? Obviously, you want to make the team here, but if Charlotte ends up being the option for you both, Chicago. Every time Chicago. If Chicago ends up being the option for you both, I mean, is that something that you guys are prepared for, and again, a good chance to work together?
Смотри, если даже мы не здесь, то там в команде вообще, что мы будем думать об этом вообще? Насчет того, что в Чикаго, если поедем, там будем. I think it's main thing is opportunity for us to improve our skills and something else help team to win more.
Ну, что надо доказывать своей игрой, что мы достойны играть в НХЛ.
Yeah, we have to play in Chicago like we deserve to play in a better league.
What about the lacrosse?
Yeah, it's from him.
Yeah. What about the lacrosse bowl? Can you tell us about that?
Лакросс, что скажешь?
Это, не знаю, это было безумно.
It was ridiculous.
Jameson said that he thought maybe Alexander was trying to do that at first, and then he got the puck back and actually went for it. Is that kind of what went through his?
What do you mean, like?
Well, he had the puck behind the net before, centered it, and then it came back to him, and that's when he.
Получается, у тебя до этого был шанс, ты поднял наверх и потом снова получил. Почему до этого не делал?
Ну, увидел то, что Рисер открылся и решил дать ему передачу.
Because first time when Rissler got a puck, like it was much better decision in the game.
What is for Alex? What's the experience in North America been like for him?
Как тебе опыт первых 3 игр в Северной Америке?
Ну, поначалу было очень тяжело, с каждой игрой становилось полегче.
First time it was tough, and in the next few games it's going down and it's easier to play.
How about for you? How much did it help being in Chicago last year?
I played 2 years in Quebec.
Right, but I mean, as far as the elevated play and the skill level, how did that help you prepare for this?
Pretty good, because game here it's more physical, more attack, more. Everything is going on net. You need to be closer to net and trying to make more traffic.
for the both of you, what's one thing that you've learned either thus far in camp or the prospect showcase?
Что для нас такого, что мы прям узнали, чего мы не знали до этого в этом кемпе? Вот.
Я не знаю.
We don't know.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. So.
Yeah, one thing I did forget to mention was that Pomeranov was translating for Pashin there, so we did get to hear from him as well, and he was one that Rod was singing his praises there whenever he was talking. But in listening to those, obviously, it's a lot of the same thing you expect to hear from prospects in training camp and whatnot. So we won't dive into like every single thing they said, but I did like, that we, hear from, them of, wanting to play in, better league and, getting to showcase their skills and what they can do and what they can bring. And, obviously it's funny, hearing them say Charlotte instead of Chicago. I mean, is years and years and years and years of Charlotte being the AHL affiliate, but now it's Chicago. So that was a funny little laugh there. But these guys, they have experience together, and I really, they're guys that I do think they could. Do I think they make the team this year? At least this year, no, I don't think they do. But I do think these are guys that should someone go down with injury, that these guys could be ones that step up and help the team out. Again, we go back to a lot, but at the end of 2021, where like half the team was out with COVID, a lot of those guys, from Chicago stepping up, Jack Drury, Jalen Chatfield, Stefan Nazin, all of those guys stepping up and really being really good for the Hurricanes. And I do think these Pashin and Promorodov can be guys that, given the opportunity, could definitely step up and be something for the Hurricanes. Again, anything can happen. Again, Seth Jarvis last year. We talk about it all the time, but anything can happen. Rod Brind'Amour said no one has made the team and no one has not made the team. So there's no telling what could happen, in training camp. They just wrapped up with day 3. We will hear what from Rod Brind'Amour and all the players that were available. We'll hear from them in the next episode of Locked On Hurricanes. So make sure you are following the team on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Hurricanes. Myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96, and subscribe to the show on YouTube. And in the next episode, we will hear from Rod Brind'Amour and whatever players were kind enough to speak to the media today.